Okay, guys, so welcome back to the channel. This is part two. For those who missed it, I'm your host, Nee, and my co-host.
Reed. I was late. I'm sorry.
Yes, she it's a little bit. And we have our special guest back for another week, Miss Tomeika Bennett.
Yes.
Hello,
Whoop,
yay.
whoop.
So
Our
last week,
first guest.
yes, our
She did
number
so
one.
nice. We had to bring her back twice.
Yay.
Last week,
Sharita and this rhyming.
yes, she does. She makes me a rapper.
Yeah, I'm a rapper on the side.
Side Hustle Saturday.
Oh, yeah. I can be making up stuff.
That's on her other channel, y'all. Y'all gotta check her out. Go there. So last week we talked about to school or not to school, and we were talking about Steph Curry going back to school. So we're gonna dive back into where we left off, and we were talking about the education system, being able to navigate through it. So I think Rita, I'm not sure what was it, you Rita or Tomeika? It was you, Rita. So we you said, well, you're going to chime in and you wanted to talk about the system. So want to here it go.
Yes, because Tomeika was talking about the system and how to navigate the system when it comes to higher ed. I have an issue with the system. Well, I have an issue with y'all. I got a lot of issues, but anyway. I always say I am for education.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily for school in the form of college, so to speak, for certain things or whatever. Yes, certain professions, yes, you need to go to school, you need to get a certain degree, but some other stuff, it's like you just need to get the education, not necessarily a degree. And when it comes to the systems, that is exactly what it is. They're keeping us trapped in a system or for us to navigate a system. And if you think about it, the whole school system got set up was so we could be workers. Like, it wasn't for us to be creatives. It wasn't for us to be individuals. It was like, you need to follow X, Y, Z. Then this is the next step. And then this is the next step. And pretty much you are not thinking for yourself. You're just thinking based off of what somebody told you to think. And in certain fields, yes, that does apply. Like, I'm in the optometric field or the healthcare field. Yes, I got to think in a certain way because this creates certain outcomes or whatever. But this is Western medicine, Western medicine. Other people don't think the same way. They think holistically, that kind of thing. But we are caught up in a system. And I think Shanice had mentioned, I don't know if this was on camera or off camera, that she might not necessarily advocate for her kids to go to school. And I'm kind of that same mindset. Like, my daughter, she does want to be, as of right now, she wants to be a real estate agent. You don't need to go to school for that. You can be, all you have to be is 18 and pass your test. Now, if you want to be a real estate broker, so it depends on the state. I think you need to have a degree, but you just need to have the experience. I think for South Carolina, you just have to have the experience, a certain amount of years of experience, and then you could be a real estate broker. And those are some very valuable ways to make money. As you can see, people are trying to get into real estate, earning income property, that kind of thing. It's just so many different avenues that you can pursue. And higher education was fed to us. And I know me and Shanice have talked before privately that the information that our parents were given to us was old information. They were going off of the information that they had when they graduated. And when I think about when I graduated, which has been almost 20 years ago, when I graduated from undergrad.
You can't, old girl.
Listen,
I'm
we
like,
out
wow,
here.
I get better with time. But I'm like, I can't give them that same information. And even if I try to, the landscape is totally different. So when I'm talking to young people about what they want to do in the future, whether it's go to school, whatever it is, if that career, I say you need to talk to somebody who's already in that particular profession or particular career and ask them, how do you think this career is going to look in 5 years? How do you think it's going to look in 10 years? How do you think it's going to change? I mean, I'm sure the teachers never would have thought that they would be teaching on, well, I won't say they never would have thought, but teaching from a computer system and not really having to do a bunch of board work and that kind of stuff, and passing out papers and stuff like that. You just never know, like, what is the outlook for this profession in 10 years? Everything is being automated. And also too, in the system, I don't think that people, and I'm gonna shut up so someone else can talk, but I don't think people are getting what they need, which is why so many people are looking at other avenues to try and get into. And you have these people in the digital space who are teaching, you know, they have the coaches and then these online courses and this digital education where people are trying to fill in the gaps of what they didn't get in school. Or you see these people, these online coaches, they're making 6 figures and they don't need to necessarily have a degree, because people want they want the knowledge, they want the education, but they don't necessarily need a degree. And you don't necessarily need a degree anymore to make decent money. And so we are still thinking, in order for me to make good money, I have to have this particular degree, and there's different ways you can make money. Now, I know I might have opened up a whole nother can of worms, but I'm just gonna let them crawl, and I'm gonna leave it out there.
No, that was so spot on.
So
I'm gonna approach it from a couple of different angles. So, from the perspective of the system, you're right. It's so complex, and for y'all, hearing y'all say, you know, you had the parents that could give you the system. Where I, on the other side, I was a first generation college student. Thankfully, I was that kid that I knew, kind of like what Shanice said earlier. It was like, for me, it was you either going to go to college, you either going to get a job, or you going to go in the military. Well, I already knew the military wasn't, because I was always strong-willed and opinionated.
But that is a good way, though. And they will pay for your college.
It is.
Right.
And you probably won't have to be, but it's all, well, I'm sorry, I know I'm cutting you off, but it's all about our mindset of what we thought we were going to be doing in the military. But when you go in there as an officer, not saying you're not going to be on the front lines, but I know plenty of people.
Oh, yes. One of my best friends from high school, and I grew up near Shaw Air Force Base, so I went to school with kids from Shaw Air Force Base. Her dad was in the Army, so she went to Xavier University, HBCU in Louisiana. She went on an Army something, whatever. Of course, she came up out of there, and now I don't even know what I know she is past. She's a sergeant. Her ranking, and I mean, has seen the world, don't have that, all of that kind of stuff. So it's so many different avenues, and that's what it is in terms of like,
check probably too.
Yes, that part.
The stuff that Lord have mercy. Yeah, she out here killing the game, and I'm not mad at her in no form, because she had the privilege of having parents that were military and college educated. So again, that knowledge base is what makes the difference. The education model is broken. Hands down, the system is broken. Even for myself, I don't have children. I can't say that I would even put my kid in a traditional K-12 setting. Because, Sharita, you hit on that, like other cultures, we are taught about tapping into talents, what you're naturally good at, feeding off of those things, wherein for us, we were taught is this very linear thing. I go to kindergarten, I go to first grade, I graduate, then I do this thing, then that next thing. No, and we know once we got out here, we know that it was speed bumps, detours, all kind of, delays, whatever. So your route changed, but we were taught it was very linear.
Right.
And I think this has something to do, it's kind of like I don't want to say, but just kind of like the racial discrimination, because we fought to get educated, because pretty much they tried to keep everything from us.
Mhm.
So we fought to get educated. We fought to learn how to read. We fought to get into schools, and we thought that was the way. And I'm not saying that they keep moving the goalposts.
They
Oh,
do.
We still
it
peeling
moves.
back layers of what it
Oh
really
yeah.
means. They're
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, well, they got the education, but they don't know about, you can make money in real estate. You can
Right.
make money earning businesses. So it's like keep them on this particular path or whatever. And now we went on the path and we like, hold up,
Yep.
there's more stuff. Like
Yes.
Right.
they
It's
still not
definitely a
telling us
social
everything.
control. It's a social control mechanism. It definitely is. And I mean, and that's even why when you look at the debate of PWIs versus HBCUs,
Mm.
that history in and of itself, I mean, like when we think about how colleges got started, people
Mhm.
are always like, when they found out Clemson and South Carolina State University are land grant institutions, we know the money that both of them receive has been different.
Exactly.
So even
Exactly.
all of those kinds of things, it's such a complex issue. What it comes down to is exposing our kids
Right.
to as many things as possible, making sure we have to be where I will say if we are educating our kids in a normal public school K-12 setting, that's why I am a huge champion of the work that we do and the conversations that we have, because of the fact that we understand that education isn't predicated off of what happens in that classroom day to day. We know they have state standards that they have to adhere to. We know when No Child Left Behind was designed to leave us even behind,
Not
so all of that kind
exactly.
of stuff. So we understand that our conversations and education have to extend beyond the classroom,
Right.
because if we don't, we know, I think about it for us, y'all, when we were in middle and high school, we knew real quick if certain people were going to this class,
Mm-hmm.
they were already being put on the path to say this is what you can or cannot do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we know we were in our college prep tracks.
Mhm.
Nowadays, you got IB. My school at the time when I was in there, I mean, that goes to show how far AP exams and stuff is coming, access and equity, Lord Jesus. My school at the time only had one AP course, and it was calculus. And I was like, well, I know I ain't finna be in there. So even with that kind of stuff, we have to have the conversations outside of school to say, hey, baby, like Cherie, like you said, your baby want to do, Tiziana want to go into real estate. You're able to have that conversation with her and expose her to that, wherein I was about to do, y'all know I was about to be like Lil Pookie, but
Yeah,
Lil
Pookie.
Don't forget about Pookie.
Pookie over here don't have no example or
Mhm.
anybody to advocate for him. So they don't know that they need to make sure that he is intelligent enough to where he can start getting his high school credits in 8th grade, because that's possible in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
places. So that's already putting you on a different trajectory. So
Yeah.
that's part of where all of the complexities of it comes into. And that's also leads into that college funnel of why we end up in so much debt.
Mhm.
Because if I'm that student nowadays, y'all know, y'all see it. If I have a kid that's in a charter high school that's able to do dual enrollment, they get in the class at a discounted price. Depending on what school they at, they might be getting that college credit for free 99.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I potentially could have a kid that graduates with a high school diploma and an associate's degree, depending on how aggressive we are with it. That already, look how much money they're saving.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
That part.
So that's the part for us, I think, where for me, what my passion comes into play is just staying abreast of how things are shaking and changing. Because the reality for us, y'all, at the time when we graduated, for me, 22 whole years ago. Yeah. Out here, Jesus. All of these options weren't available.
Right.
So I think that's the other side of it, is that sometimes I'm like, we have to show ourselves a little bit of grace because we did the best we could with the information that we had at the time. So of course now it's like, now that we know better, we got to do better. So that's one side of it. Now, the other side of it is, like Sharita, like you mentioned, we see the trends that are changing. If y'all have never watched the video, Did You Know, on YouTube, Google it, it'll bring it up. It talks about that advancement and how fast we were going to get there. One thing that's always sticks to me from that video was, and this is because I love words, they talked about during the time of William Shakespeare, the dictionary was only the size of a New York Times newspaper.
Wow.
So we think about how words have been added to the dictionary. When we got to a place, I remember when I was teaching a course and showing my students that video, I said, is Google in the dictionary? And it was like, no, it's not in the dictionary. I said, look in the dictionary and see.
Wow.
So even with that, we can submit words to keep expanding our vocabulary. So that's why even for us as Black women, as the carriers of our community, we have to have these kind of conversations because we know the information trickle down isn't happening in the same way. So that's the biggest thing, is just that figuring out what's the platform to continue those conversations, because we know the system, it wasn't designed for us.
Right.
So we have to do something. It's like, if we're going to put our kids in it, we got to have something parallel to it. So that's where, for me, that's where part of my passion comes into play. But I'm a hush because it's still, what other thoughts are out there?
No, I mean, this is good. This is all good stuff.
All of that. But, and Shanice, okay, so I'm going to go back to, I am going to jump in and say this while it's still fresh on my mind, because I don't want it to leave me again. So that was okay. So we I just said about dual enrollment and a kid earning those college credits or whatever while they're in high school. All right. That's one thing that didn't exist. AmeriCorps, on the other hand, did exist. The Education Award was a little bit smaller when we came out of high school. The crazy thing for me was I knew AmeriCorps, existed. But I didn't know the movement
How
of
did
it.
you find out about AmeriCorps?
I don't know if y'all high school had it when
I don't think so, because I didn't hear about it till later.
Yeah. Right. So in high school, the high school version of it is called Learn and Serve. So if you had service learning organizations and things like that, that was designed to get you in that service, help you in that service oriented mind. I served on a youth Learn and Serve committee, was in the room with AmeriCorps members, but they still never really made the connection of, we are serving because this is helping fund our education. So even though I was in the room, if the appropriate message wasn't being delivered, I didn't know. But because I had exposure to it, at least by the time I finished college, and had realized that I spent, and this is again another one of those things, I'm not a fan of programs, scholarships. To me now, I understand, I was like, this wasn't no scholarship. When I graduated, for example, I became a part of the South Carolina Teaching Fellows Program. It was an agreement that I'm gonna teach you, I'm gonna learn to do this college thing, then I'm gonna come out here and teach these 4 years, and then I'll be debt free. Lo and behold, I got to my senior year student teaching and was like, ooh, Father,
this ain't for me.
I like education, but
not this part.
Not this part. But I didn't know. I was just excited about the fact that, ooh, this is a special program. It's the first year started. My mom and daddy, I mean, granted, they was like, we saved what we could, baby. And they did what they could. So I'm fortunate for that. But even with programs like that, I always say you have to be careful with reading the fine print. Because if I didn't teach, my only other way out of it was if I became a school counselor. Hello. What was that going to require?
Oh,
you ain't going to pay for me to get my master's degree. This is only, so if I wanted to get out of my undergrad, I still had to figure out how I was going to pay for that master's degree.
You caught up in that system again.
Yes.
And if you don't know, the questions, and that's a lot of times why I have the conversations that I have with people. Learning the questions to ask is
right.
half the battle. So even with that, like the idea of a gap year, nobody in our communities were really talking about that. But the more and more I've been in the field and all of that, y'all know, if you look back at it, most people, I mean, I was 17 when I graduated high school. I ain't really know. And looking back, like you said, gap year could have been a year of service with AmeriCorps, or am I going to take this time to work and save up some money so I'm potentially, I'm reducing whatever debt, or I'm smart and savvy enough to know, if I go over here and work at Verizon, heck, if I go and work at QT, I can get tuition reimbursement. That's why Chick-fil-A, all of those kinds of things. The only catch that I tell people you have to be mindful of is what their terms and conditions are for that tuition reimbursement. But hey, if you can figure out how to make it work for you, make it work for you. I'm with it. So that's the big thing. So
I was going to jump in real quick and say all of them don't have stipulations. So when I finished grad school, not grad school, when I was going to grad school, I was working at an assisted living facility, and I found out that they do have tuition reimbursement. And I asked the question. I was like, well, once you pay, what are the stipulations? And there were none.
Wow.
I got that money in my hand, not to the school. That money came to me for grad school.
That's huge. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, what I did with that money is a different story.
Hey, we live, we learn.
I know. If I knew then what I know now. And what I said to myself, I said, well, I put this on my student loans, the store ain't going to touch it. It's not going to do nothing. It wouldn't have put a dent in it. But just to have that, if I would have known that for school, or if I had the opportunity for college, or like you said, that gap year. See, I was always told, well, I should say under the impression, I can't really say if somebody told me this, but it's like, if you take a semester off, or if you don't go, you're not going to go back. Like you're not going to finish. So that's what I heard. Because I even thought about it one time. I thought about taking a break. But it was always, nope, if you do it, you're not gonna finish. So, almost 20 something years later, as we were talking about school, I'm still stuck with these student loans. And for what? If I knew the information that I know now, or just took another route, I wouldn't be in this kind of debt.
Yeah. No, and I understand that, and I think that's the hard part. And I'm looking at the time too. I want to make sure that we don't run up on that again. So I'm gonna, I guess, my two last thoughts that I would say for this moment is the key is that we just have to be conscious about asking those challenging questions of our guidance counselors, of whoever else, because that's one of the things too that we didn't necessarily have access to outside of our guidance counselors. And even with that, that's a whole, Sharita, as you would say, another can of worms too, because they're not even really allowed to do their jobs for what it was intended to be. But it's a whole nother.
Okay, I was gonna say because I had questions about my guidance counselor, and I was like, well, why she didn't tell me? Why she didn't do this? Why she didn't let me know? And I felt some type of way because she was a sister. Give me the information. What's going on?
All skin folk ain't kinfolk, but
sometimes they don't know, because I know even in undergrad, I had to advocate for myself. These colleges were about making money.
Yes.
The school, Tomeika and I both attended the same undergrad.
But I was talking about high school.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's both. It's a little bit of both. I mean, the high school, whether or not they're giving you accurate and fair information. We know people that were at the top of the class or had parents that knew the questions to ask and all of those kinds of things. So the biggest thing right now is more so immersing yourself into different environments that are going to give you access to information, because that's really what it is. Like Sharita, you mentioned about us being in a digital age and all of this free information that's out there. Yeah, I mean, you got Teachable, You got what is it, Coursera. That
Mm-hmm.
those courses on Coursera, honey, baby, some of them are taught by the Ivy Leagues that you can take for free. Or if you decide that you want to get the certificate, you pay whatever amount to get that certification in that particular thing. If you want to go out here to Google and do Google Analytics courses and become a certified Google data and the analyst.
Oh, some of those Google courses are free as
Yes,
well.
they are.
Right, exactly.
And I was at one library. Check your local library, because there was one county where you could take college level courses for free as long as you were a member of the library. You got it's not like you got the college credit, but all you needed was the knowledge. So as long
Yep.
as you had the knowledge, you can go and do the thing or whatever. And that's why I say I'm not necessarily for college, but
Yeah.
definitely get
Education.
the
Yeah,
education
the
that
education.
you
Yeah.
need to do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the biggest thing, is just the understanding that there's so many avenues to get the education. And really, I think that's the message that our families and grandparents and stuff really were trying to get to us, because we know, I mean, like my grandparents, I mean, most of them know more than eighth grade formal education, but the stuff that they learned just by way of ingenuity and all of that, and being exposed, just trying things, we know that makes a difference. So that information piece is critical, and just continuing to expose ourselves to those things. But the thing is we got to get into those spaces. Like
You got to get into those spaces.
you said library.
Yeah, the library.
That is one
And
resource.
I tell the kids that I talk to, I'm like, ask somebody who's in your profession. Not only, like I was saying, ask what is this job going to look like in 5 years, 10 years. I encourage them to ask, what else would you have done with this particular degree that you could use and everything? Because you just don't know. I talk to kids and I'm like, okay, if they're a junior or senior, like, what you think about doing once you graduate? I don't ask them if they're going to college. I just say, what do you think about doing once you graduate? And they're like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I'm like, okay, what made you interested in that? Oh, I like kids. I was like, it's so many things you could do because you like kids. I was like, you can be a doctor. I said, I work with kids every day and I'm an optometrist. I'm like, just because you like kids doesn't mean you have to be a teacher. I said, you can have your own daycare. You can start your own school. You can do tutoring and stuff. Like, you could do, the sky's the limit. You could do physical therapy with just working with kids. But
yeah. Now that definitely, I have, of course, working in higher education, and that will be, I guess, I know we got to move into our next bit here. So I'm just going to say, yes, keep that thought there, the information piece, and how we prepare young people for life after high school.
So that's what I was going to say. We are going to go ahead and tie this up, but let's give the people, because I know the last one was abrupt when I just stopped and was like, hey, we got to stop. Last 2-minute thoughts. Rita, we're going to start with you, and then Tomeika, and then we'll end with me.
Okay. Last couple of thoughts, especially since this conversation got sparked because of Steph Curry. I commend him for completing his degree, but I feel like individually you have to decide if your career field that you are going into is really going to even require a degree. Another thing I share with the students is to go on to Indeed, go on to Monster Job and see what is required. What are they looking at? I'm sure they're not saying you need a bachelor's in, accounting, or I don't know, you probably will need a bachelor's in accounting, but look at what the requirements are and not necessarily a degree. Because I know for me personally, I didn't have to major in biology, and if I would have known that, I would have majored in something totally else, and I could have still been an optometrist. But
wow.
Yes. So my quick thing that I'm just going to say is I'm just going to lean into ask questions, even if you feel uncertain about it, even if the question doesn't come out all eloquent and well spoken. Be curious. If it's something, when it comes to your future, be curious about what it takes to secure the future that you envision. So kind of the same thing that Sharita was saying, asking those questions, like people in your field. I agree. Me working in higher education and being a career specialist as well, like having that type of certification, I do a lot of the same things. Find the job that you want. Look at the requirements. Start from there. So ask questions of yourself and others.
So I'm gonna piggyback on both of them. And again, props to Steph Curry. We were not knocking you, just want to start some conversation.
Absolutely.
Definitely ask the questions, find the resources. So go to the library. Rita said the library has a lot of information. Go to your guidance counselors. If the one's not working for you, see if you can talk to somebody else. Also, another thing that's available to us now, or I should say to you now, that we didn't have, there's other options or other ways of making money. So Rita talked about her daughter wanting to be a realtor at 18. If she still want to go to school, she could probably do that and be a realtor. Also notary. All you got to do is be 18. You could be a signing agent, same thing, where you can make money. So you don't necessarily have to have that debt. If you decide you do want to go to those colleges, you can probably pay it off while you're in school. Find out those ways where people are paying for you to go back to school. We mentioned Chick-fil-A. You even said QT, and I didn't know about that. I was like, oh, for real? The gas station is paying for you to go to school? Come on, the gas station.
Yes. One of my students worked for QT there. Like, he was doing something good with sales. He was like, oh, yeah, my award for this month was the Apple Watch.
What?
Come on. Find these resources. They are out there. You have Google, talk to people, and get it. We are for education. Some may need to go to college, some may not. But just make sure you do your due diligence and find out what you want to do and do your research. Okay. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode and the last one. If you didn't get a chance, go ahead and check out the last one. You need to watch that before you watch this. But this was very good information. Tomeika, thank you so much for joining us. Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
So until next time, y'all take care. And remember to come back and see us next Thursday, 7:30. Same time, same place, same channel.
Yes. Tell your friends to subscribe.
Yes, like and subscribe. What we say? Ring that bell.
Ring, 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 ring.
Have a good night. Bye, guys.